You're not family. The text came in at 12:03 a.m., right on time. My birthday. No call, no explanation. Just those 3 words sitting on my screen like a verdict. I stared at it while the candles on the small cake in front of me burned down unevenly, wax cold onto the plate. My phone buzzed once more. Don't contact us again. We're done. That was it. No fight, no argument, no build-up, just erasure, delivered by text, like canceling a subscription. I didn't cry. I didn't type back. I set the phone face down and let the room stay quiet. For years, they told me family meant loyalty, respect, silence, and obedience. Tonight, they'd decided I failed whatever tests they'd been grading me on in secret. What they didn't realize was that the message didn't just hurt, it documented something. Because when I turned the phone back over, I didn't open a reply box. I took a screenshot. Before I tell you why that single screenshot changed everything, and why my parents were calling nonstop the next morning, tell me this in the comments. What's the coldest message a family member has ever sent you when you least expected it? I didn't answer them. That was the part they didn't expect. My parents thrived on reaction, on explanations, on the scramble to prove I was still worth claiming. Silence had never been my role in the family. It made them uneasy. I washed the plate, dried it, and put the cake back in the fridge. Very normal things, grounding things, the kind of routine that keeps your hand steady when your chest wants to cave in. My phone stayed face down on the counter. A few minutes passed, then another vibration. I didn't look. If they were done with me, they wouldn't keep checking. And if they kept checking, then the message wasn't closure, it was leverage. Silence takes that leverage. I knew their patterns. First came rejection, then came the wait, then came the expectation that I would break the quiet and apologize for whatever offense they'd decided I committed. Instead, I opened my laptop, not to write a message, not to vent. I pulled up my work email and logged in, letting the familiar interface settle my breathing. Notifications populated the screen, threads, deadlines, names that mattered more than theirs ever had. That text didn't just end a relationship. It created a record, a timestamp, a statement made without witnesses, but not without consequences. I saved the screenshot to a folder I already had, and that's when I knew. They thought they'd erased me. They had no idea they'd just handed me proof. That text didn't come out of nowhere. It was the end of a pattern they'd been running for years. Growing up, birthdays were never really about me. They were performance reviews. My parents would sit across the table, smiling tightly, and ask questions that sounded like concern, but landed like audits. Still at that job? Is it stable? When are you going to do something real? Every milestone was weighed against someone else's child, a cousin's promotion, a neighbor's new house. Success, to them, wasn't progress, it was optics. The year before, my mother had laughed when I told her about a project I'd led at work. That's cute, but does it pay like a real position? My father didn't even look up from his phone. Don't get ahead of yourself. Companies use people like you. You should be grateful they keep you around. I learned early that nothing I did would ever be enough if it didn't elevate them by association. So I stopped sharing, stopped explaining, stopped inviting them into the parts of my life they couldn't control. They mistook that distance for failure. When they sent that text, "You're not family," they thought they were cutting me loose before I embarrassed them further. What they didn't know was that by then, I wasn't dependent on their approval. I was just documented in places they couldn't intimidate. And one of those places was about to matter a lot. I didn't correct them when they called my work nothing. Correcting people like my parents only teach them where to aim next. What I did instead was compartmentalize. At work, I wasn't the kid they dismissed at family dinners. I was the person people forwarded problems to when they didn't want mistakes. the one copied quietly on emails that never mentioned titles, only outcomes. I worked under a division that valued discretion over visibility, and visibility was the only kind of success my parents recognized. They thought silence meant stagnation. They thought privacy meant shame. They never asked where my paycheck came from anymore because to them, it didn't matter. It wasn't impressive enough to be worth remembering. That text, "You're not family," arrived less than 12 hours after something else had happened. A message from my director, short, direct. "We need documentation, immediately." There had been an internal issue, a conduct review, something involving leadership and how they communicated outside the company, the kind of thing that required screenshots, dates, exact language. I opened the folder on my laptop, the same one I'd added the birthday text to earlier, not out of spite, out of habit. Because when you work in environments where words have consequences, you learn to keep records. You learn that what people say casually can become evidence the moment power shifts. My parents believed texts disappeared into emotion. They didn't know I worked in a world where screenshots didn't disappear at all. They stayed, they traveled, they escalated. And the person their message was about to reach, their boss, took those things very seriously. They didn't beg at first. They waited. By morning, my phone was still silent, but my inbox wasn't. An email from my mother, subject line blank, then another, then a missed call that rang exactly long enough to prove restraint. They were recalculating, because the screenshot wasn't just proof of cruelty, it was proof of judgment, of how casually they used exclusion as leverage. And somewhere between midnight and morning, they realized who else might care. My parents worked for the same company. Different departments, same leadership chain, same code of conduct that took external communications very seriously, especially when those communications reflected character. At 8:14 a.m., my father finally texted, "We need to talk. There's been a misunderstanding." Misunderstanding, the favorite word of people who said exactly what they meant. I didn't reply. At 8:27, another message. "Your mom was emotional. You know how she gets. Don't make this bigger than it needs to be." Bigger. That told me everything. They hadn't reached out because they missed me. They reached out because something had landed on a desk above theirs, something that didn't belong in a family argument anymore. I checked my work email again. A reply from my director, received, forwarding to HR leadership. That was when the calls started coming faster. Not angry, not accusatory, careful. They were desperate now, not to fix us, but to contain what they'd already put in writing. And desperation makes people forget who actually has the leverage. At 8:02 a.m., I finally responded. One line. I didn't mean to cause problems. I was hurt. I shouldn't have reacted. The reply came immediately. "Thank God," my mother wrote. "We knew you'd understand." Understand, that word again, the one they used when they wanted compliance dressed up as maturity. My father followed up with a call I didn't answer, then a text. "Let's meet tonight. We can clear this up before it spirals." Before it spirals. They weren't worried about me. They were worried about the direction this had already taken without their permission. I agreed to talk. I let them believe the screenshot had been sent impulsively, that I was emotional, that I hadn't thought it through. My mother even sent a heart emoji. "Families fight," she wrote. "We don't involve outsiders." I stared at that sentence longer than the rest, because what they didn't realize was that I hadn't involved outsiders out of anger. I'd involved systems, and systems don't care about apologies. By the time we agreed on the time to talk, they were calm again, confident, already rehearsing how they'd reframe the night before. They thought I was backing down. They didn't know the process had already started. And once it starts, it doesn't reverse, no matter how soft your voice gets. We met at their office. Not home, not a cafe, work. They chose it. thinking it gave them control, familiar ground, badges, glass walls, the illusion of authority. My parents sat side by side in a small conference room, shoulders angled toward each other like a united front. My mother reached for my hand when I walked in. I let her. It made her relax. "We're glad you came," she said softly. "This never should have left the family." I nodded, sat down, said nothing. The room hummed with quiet productivity outside the glass. People walking past, laptops open, a normal workday unfolding while something irreversible waited just beneath it. My father leaned forward. "HR reached out this morning," he said carefully. "They're asking questions. We just need to clarify context." Context. The word people use when the words themselves are indefensible. "What you sent," my mother added quickly, "it didn't reflect the whole picture. We were emotional. You know we didn't mean it like that." I finally looked up. Calm, measured. "I sent exactly what you wrote." They exchanged a glance. That was when the door opened. A woman stepped in, badge clipped neatly to her jacket. HR. Not rushed, not angry, just prepared. "Thank you for waiting," she said, closing the door behind her. "This shouldn't take long." My parents straightened in their chairs. The trap wasn't the meeting, it was the setting. Because once HR sits down, family conversations become records. HR didn't start with accusations. She never does. She placed a printed sheet on the table and slid it forward slowly, letting the motion carry the weight. My mother glanced down first. Her breath caught when she recognized the message. "You're not family." Timestamped. Names attached. "We'd like you to explain the context of this communication," the HR manager said calmly, "specifically why it was sent and whether it reflects an ongoing pattern." My father cleared his throat. "It was emotional," he said. "A private family moment that was taken out of context." HR nodded. "Then help me understand the intent." Silence stretched. My mother laughed softly, the sound brittle. "We were trying to motivate her. She's sensitive, she exaggerates." "Motivate," HR repeated, typing. "By disowning her?" My mother's smile faltered. "It wasn't literal." "So you didn't mean it?" HR asked. My father jumped in. "We meant space," he said quickly. "Boundaries. She overreacted by sending it." HR looked at him steadily. "Did either of you consider that sending this message might violate the company's conduct policy regarding harassment or retaliation, especially given your shared reporting structure?" My father hesitated. That hesitation said more than any answer. "Well," my mother said sharply, irritation breaking through, "she should know better than to air family matters at work." HR stopped typing. "Just to be clear," she said, voice firm now, "you're acknowledging the message was sent, you stand by its content, and you believe her forwarding it was inappropriate." "Yes," my father said. My mother nodded. HR closed the folder. "Thank you," she said. "That's all I needed." HR didn't raise her voice. She didn't have to. She slid another document onto the table, this one thicker. Printed policies, highlighted sections, notes in the margins. "This communication," she said evenly, "meets our definition of harassment. The timing, the language, and the power dynamic matter." My mother started shaking her head. "This is ridiculous. We were at home, off the clock." HR met her eyes. "Company policy doesn't stop applying because you're emotional." My father opened his mouth, then closed it again. He already knew where this was going. "Effective immediately," HR continued, "both of you are being placed on administrative leave pending review. Access badges will be deactivated today. IT has already been notified." The words landed quietly, cleanly. My mother's face drained of color. "You can't do this over a text." HR nodded once. "We can, and we are." She stood, gathering the papers. "You'll be contacted with next steps. Until then, you are not to discuss this matter with colleagues or with her." She glanced at me briefly, not unkindly, just final. The meeting was over. My parents sat frozen in their chairs, staring at the table where control used to live, and for the first time, they had nothing left to say. They caught up to me in the hallway. Not running, not shouting, too controlled for that. My mother grabbed my sleeve just hard enough to feel intentional. You didn't have to go that far, she hissed, eyes darting toward passing coworkers. This will follow us. You've embarrassed us. There it was. Not, I'm sorry, not, we were wrong. You can fix this, my father added quietly. Tell them you misunderstood. Say you were emotional. You owe us that much. I gently pulled my arm free. I didn't misunderstand anything, I said. I just stopped protecting you. My mother's voice cracked. We're your parents. I met her gaze, calm. You said I wasn't family, I replied. I believed you. The elevator doors opened. They didn't follow me inside. The next morning, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. Missed calls, voicemails, messages stacked on top of each other, all saying the same thing in different fonts. Please, we didn't mean it. Call us back. I didn't. By noon, their tone shifted from anger to panic to bargaining. By evening, it was silence again, the kind that follows consequences you can't talk your way out of. I spent my birthday evening alone. Not lonely, just quiet. Ordered takeout, opened a window, let the day end without anyone telling me who I was supposed to be. Family isn't who gets access to you by default. It's who treats your existence like something they don't get to revoke. They said I wasn't family. They were right about one thing. I stopped being theirs.